Hello everyone, welcome to the third webinar about materials development. In the previous webinar, we discussed about what is delaying materials development and how can we speed it up. It was a very interesting conversation together with Ayken Pavuk, founder of BS Particle, and Pedro Mendes, researcher at UGent. If you're interested in watching it, you can find it in the description below. Today we will talk about changing academia beyond publish and perish. Pedro Mendes, researcher at UGent, will guide us through these thoughts.
There have been troubles reproducing the results that have been published. Very high numbers of unreproducible studies have been found, which is not only a problem for science in the point being that we put effort and for no actual outcome, but that's not the only problem. It's also a problem for the trust of society in science, which is crucial. Just think about the times we are living now. It's not only about a problem for society, but a problem for science on the ethical practices that we should encourage and should follow. I think people in academia have gone through a bit through the situation or heard about the situation that is characterizing this cartoon, which is related to just some of the practices in academia becoming a currency, like co-authorship in papers, which has been used as a currency to reward people instead of being what it should be, which is acknowledging people for their right effort into study some matters. So this is what is the status today. What is in fact causing this? There's never a single cause, of course, but a cause, or I would claim the main cause, it's the pressure for scientists to publish more and more. This has been coined as the publish or perish system, and it also came to the mainstream media several times, that publish or perish is what is driving mainly scientists. For instance, this article from the New York Times takes a study that said that most scientists were submitting papers during their last Christmas holidays or winter holidays, and that is clearly telling us what the main focus is. And of course, as any system, this has pros and cons. But just having a simple look at Wikipedia, I think clearly tells us that the disadvantages clearly surpass the advantages of the current system. This is also led to what is the so-called metric tide. So what I mean is the race of quantification, but especially simplistic quantification, trying to quantify the aspects of science in a very simplistic way, which is not only a feeling, but several reports have shown that has caused some deviations in the scientific process, and also some behaviors that again are unethical or at least not desired. I think this is relatively straightforward to understand. What is the problem with the metrics is, for instance, if you take the left part, you see the two most common metrics still used today, disregarded the fact that they were proven to not be useful or fit for the purpose most people still use them today. The first one is the impact factor of a journal, which is a metric which is just related to the journal, but is very often used to assess, or as a metric to the quality of a given article, and it's just based on journal statistics. And then there's the H index, which tries to quantify, or people have been using to quantify the impact of a researcher's studies. And again, it's a very simple metrics. You only see two variables there, so it would be very surprising that would accurately quantify any kind of quality of research. In fact, the whole process, as you would see on this description from a group of universities, the whole process is much more complex. then this metrics would tell us. You see that research groups can interact in many different ways. In a specific project, one of these research groups can bring a spin-off company, another type of companies, and these interactions make that the process is first non-linear, and secondly, it's highly dynamic. So we need also to take this into account when measuring, evaluating science, because it's through this evaluation that scientists are rewarded. So this is a short view on the problem, but what we also like to give you, it's a perspective on what is already being done about it, to start the discussion and not to close it. I think that's an important point. It just what has been tried or has been recommended till now. So first step, I would say, it was the declaration on the research assessment in 2012. And that they had 4 recommendations to scientists, and the two of them I put here. The first one is quite simple: just discard these simplistic metrics in your own work. It's as simple as that. And when evaluating both your own work, promoting your own work, and evaluating other people's work, just focus on the content. Then a group of universities that I referred already earlier, 3 years ago, made a study on what is on the societal impact of universities, and what came clearly there is that we need to account for all the interactions between researchers and stakeholders, and these interactions is at the end what brings the development of knowledge and the development of new products, processes that have societal impact. So we need also to assess the interactions, the processes, and not only the results. And that's it. We need to assess societal impact and not a narrow definition of scientific impact, and based on quality and relevance and not quantity. And finally, just last year, the Royal Society of Chemistry also asked for a report on the consequences, basically, of their prizes, of the awards they were giving. And also there, the conclusion is that we also need to review these policies. And the main aspect that came across is that there are many types of excellence that are needed in science. Scientific excellence, as we today view it, as basically as at the end of a researcher's career, it has been what has been mainly rewarded till now. But we also need excellence in making teams, because teamwork is crucial for science. Technical excellence to make new equipment, it's also necessary. So we need to also reward all these types of excellence instead of having, again, a narrow view on that. And the Royal Society of Chemistry is also taking a role there. This is just a flavor of what has been done, but that's clear. The situation is still there, so we need to do more. So for you, what are the relevant aspects of science that are still not sufficiently rewarded today? How would you reward or evaluate those aspects? And finally, do you know of any examples of good rewarding systems that use good metrics, or at least that give the space to people to do meaningful research for society? I think that's our, it's just a starting point for our discussion. Feel free to come front and bring your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. It was a very nice presentation. I think now we have a kind of a clear overview of what we need to discuss about. We have 15 minutes, so please bring up your ideas, or just try to share your practices, because this is also very important for us. Try to see what is working for you.
Maybe I'll just bring back the first question, which for me, I think the most important. So, and I think maybe it's also the one everyone can have a perspective on it. So for you, what are the relevant aspects of the science you made, or you think other people make, that are not sufficiently rewarded today, that one does but gets no sufficient reward for it? unmute your micro and go immediately to the discussion. Don't need to go through the chat, right, Alessandra?
Yes, I think they're also able to, everyone is able to unmute themselves. So you can just unmute, or if you want to answer, you can also use the meeting chat on your right. So this is also another option, but I think it will be better to just have a smooth conversation.
Okay, I'll start. So I think the parts that are not really rewarded are the small incremental improvements in research. So what you see in big impact factor stuff is stuff like breakthroughs, really new innovative things that obviously a lot of people were already looking for. And what you hardly ever see is just a small improvement that either gets not published or only in a unknown journal that nobody will find or even look for. So that makes it quite unrewarding to even publish that sort of stuff, because you would rather bundle a few of those improvements into one better publication than publish them separately.
Joost, does that also mean that some of the smaller steps are sometimes not published or are lost in this process?
Yeah, I think they are. Especially if you look in the method section of certain papers, you might not always see some of the innovations they did in their measurement setup. For example, they might have designed a new add-on or improvement of their old measurement setup, but you don't know that. You probably never will, and because that's not important scientific information, for example.
But also, I think it is quite difficult, or it could be quite difficult to translate all that information that you have gained during the experiment into a publication or into something that you can share with someone else.
Yeah, so that's what I think the value is in having a network and talking with your peers in that field, because they know such details and they don't get lost in publication.
And how, Joost, would you think one can evaluate that? Because I think I agree with you. I think it's basically about keeping these interactions, and the value of in this case, or why should you be rewarded, is because you are sharing your knowledge with your peers. So can you think about something on how to evaluate this?
Not really now, because the problem I think is that it's those small things that you might know, but they are already published somewhere in the small print of old papers, or there's something your bachelor student did once that you don't really look into anymore, or so for the researcher, there's no need to share that immediately, but for the network as a whole, there is. So you either need to get some sort of network point system in place, like what ResearchGate has, that has sort of metric with how much you interact with the network. Because else there's no motivation to publish such things.
But do you have an idea how to do it from the practical side?
No, not right now.
Maybe put a lot of GoPros in your lab and then record everything you do.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But
that would be really nice.
Yeah, I'm working on making the setup digital, remotely accessible. But that doesn't solve it. No. But if you look at ResearchGate, for example, they have a system where you can get sort of a rating that if you interact a lot on this big question part that they have, and you respond in discussions and that sort of things, then you get more points on ResearchGate. So I don't know, I think you might show up higher in search results or something, I don't know, but that way you can still transfer your knowledge that might not be published?
I think it's a bit similar to Ultimaker, for example. It's a company manufacturing 3D printing systems, and they also have quite an active community of users. And there they also see that people responding to a lot of questions in the forums, they earn some credits or some points, or at least some credibility, and then that's something that they value.
I think that's an important aspect. I think especially to start moving from this system. But where I would distinguish, where I would make a difference is between what are short-term actions to give an immediate incentive for people to be rewarded. So I do think then a simple point system can work. But on the long term, we are again, there will be a way to play with this system. And that's always the case when you have simplistic metrics. So for me, what you said, Heike, about having a GoPro and constantly sharing it, I think it's in fact it's a very important point in the sense that what matters most is the process. So in this case, you have a systematic way to always share your results and not really the result itself. So I think people should be rewarded in that sense. That's my personal opinion. I don't know other people what they think about it, but my personal opinion is that one. We should be more rewarded by what we do, and that if that is intrinsically beneficial, so that it's always sharing the best practices, rather than once this best practice will make a new thing and sometimes will not bring a true breakthrough.
I'm curious what the others are thinking of this topic.
Hello.
Hi.
Well, if you think about the relevant aspects of science that are not sufficiently rewarded today, that is definitely the things that at the end doesn't give that are not so innovative to end up in a publication. So, but still they are important. They are leading certainly to improvement in the technology. So how to recognize these small things that are not well enough to be published? It's a question to be discussed, I would say.
Yeah.
I think that at the end, what we are always coming back is to publication. So I think the most important point is if we start rewarding other types or other means of sharing knowledge, that will make that people will also find ways to share other type of knowledge. Because I think that's always the background. At least I understood it from Nemanja and Joost. It was a bit on that. No, do you agree with that?
Yeah, it always get back to the publications. So, but I don't see any other window or any other source of where you can find the answers or for whatever you do. It has to be somewhere visible, and you can call it publication, you can call it a channel, but it's still the same thing.
But at least if you can, if there is a solution, a thing to improve this process, I think a new reward system that stimulates sharing of the littlest incremental improvements would already be beneficial. Instead of this major, it should be a full publication with very interesting results. I think it will never happen that everybody has exactly the same infrastructure, and that if one person on the world does one modification, that everybody is aware of this modification. I think that's a utopia. But at least incentivizing sharing also little improvements, I think would be already a great path forward. The only question is how to find this way to incentivize the sharing of small incremental improvements, or also maybe incentivizing the sharing of, I would say, negative results, or tests that didn't successfully resulted in the result that you were looking for.
I think there we should Yes, I also think about the manifesto. I think there we should, we can have two approaches. I think one can be a bit more institutional. So like, scientific societies, also with the example I gave before, I think there can take a role on that in name of the community publishing these results. So I think that's a place where we can go and ask for this kind of initiatives. But then, as also it was mentioned before, a point system for that could give some basic incentive to start with.
Yeah.
But in any case, maybe I'll just like to make to raise another point for discussion, which is a bit out of maybe just science as we see it, but again, we are now having this very narrow view on impact. So impact being how much is cited, but I would, for instance, claim that a professor that is able to make a change and make and educate people that will be the next most innovative people would deserve as much or even more reward than the top scientist. How other people see this? That's my question. Shall we reward more education because also of the difference it makes to society?
Well, maybe these professors or the people that are in a education system, they get some different kind of rewards, which shall not necessarily be recognized through the points or through some kind of factors. So, but certainly they have to be acknowledged. They have to be somehow bring in connections with those that eventually make some changes. But I understand that now we have to figure it out how, and it's tricky.
Yeah, and in my opinion, the stuff like education impact or something like that should not be reflected in the scientific part. I mean, as a university, if you hire or appoint new teachers, professors, you should of course take this into consideration, and there could be a benchmark or reward system for that. I mean, student teaching awards or teacher of the year stuff like that. But that doesn't really help the scientific output necessarily.
But it should also be not negatively stimulated. So if someone puts a lot of effort in education, I think it should not mean that in the case of that you mentioned, Joost, in the case of ResearchGate, that if he doesn't have the time to be then active on all these fora or be involved in reviewing other research, that he's negatively credited, and that no one really believes him because he has not enough point earned by being active on other media. So even if he's doing a lot of teaching and he has one great contribution, that's still, I would say, equally graded. So doing a lot of teaching, which is, I would say, more offline or not involved in the publishing or sharing results, should not have a negative impact on.
No, I agree on that.
And I think today I can imagine that it is. I think if you are a top professor at Stanford or any of the other great universities and you are publishing a lot groundbreaking research, then you are better connected to great publishers than if you are a great professor and teaching a lot and less publishing.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
But so for me, this also gives a taste of what we need to do, and also for me kind of answers Nemanja question. So we don't have to come to a single system, because a single system will never fit all purposes we need for societal impact of academia. So indeed, education and science are not the same, but they are intertwined in universities. And we need people that focus on teaching. We need people that focus on science, and that are multiple ways of doing it. So I think what has made this go wrong the last few decades is that we are focusing on a single evaluation system, which means that all incentives lead to the same way. And what we need to do now is to diversify these incentives. So if we find nothing better to do, we should just reward other things, such that diverse pathways that all contribute to society are rewarded. For me, that's a way to go as well. Does that make sense to you, Nemanja, for instance?
So
Yes,
that is,
say it does. So,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying that it has a bit sense, but still quite open question and hard to bond these two aspects together and then to make it possible to evaluate it together. Yeah.
I'm also quite curious how others think about the following. So in some cultures, it's highly positive if professors, or it's seen as highly positive if professors are moving towards the era or the realm of entrepreneurship, and if they have multiple spin-off companies from their research field. There are also some cultures where people think that researchers need to stay researchers and don't become really commercial or leverage their knowledge, and stay out of, I would say, the business part. In some sense, if you can say if a professor is very good in creating spin-off companies that are solving a sincere problem in the commercial market, it is a sign of the usability of the research, or the impact that the research can directly make. So in some sense, you can say it's a good thing, because it also gives some kind of feedback to the loop into the research of the professor, that he maybe the second time thinks a little bit more commercially. But maybe you don't want to do that because it maybe influences the decisions that this researcher is making. Curious to know how others think about spinning out companies from the research that is done by professors and research groups. Joost, maybe you have a...
Yeah, so I think it kind of depends on what we're looking at, right? If you're looking at career rewards, then I think having spin-offs will look good in your CV. So if you are applying for a new position anywhere, they will definitely take it into account that you have 3 spin-offs and 100 publications, and the total sum of your work, teaching awards and the amount of students you had can all be taken into account if you apply for a new position. But so in that sense, that can be the reward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're purely looking at the scientific output, then there is no metric to measure anything other than publications.
Yeah.
So if you were to sort of see the value of a researcher in that sense and reward that with something, you need something that can summarize all of these aspects. So not only publications and their impact, but also how are you in governmental bodies as an advisor, or are you in spin-offs? How many students have you accompanied in their PhD or thesis? And
yeah, I think also in this respect, getting a very sci-fi type of infrastructure that is using, I would say, fancy technology like blockchain to, on one side, make it easier to open up your knowledge to others, but also still maintain a certain trackability. That if maybe you, Joost, as a researcher, you open up some knowledge and via this centralized system, in the end, maybe Sony uses this knowledge to commercialize some product, that you are aware that your knowledge is used in that respect and are also receiving some of the commercial value that it creates.
I think that can be always. That's that you were talking, Ike, to start with, if it would be acceptable or not in some cultures. I think as of today, most universities have moved to promote spin-off companies from professors. So I think that's clear. So I think that should be promoted again. I think what matters is that there's a certain balance that is kept at the department or university level. You have to have all kind of people such that the balance is there for the kind of education and science and also more practical impact the university wants to have. So again, I think it's really about focusing on the goal of evaluating a professor by the goal that he wants to achieve and how close is getting to that goal, and then it's to the university to keep the right balance. I think that's mainly what I would definitely what I have the feeling it's now being done is some universities are pushing all professors to do this, which is also not the way, as of course is not the way to have everyone just teaching and not doing science. But it's always a bit like it comes a tide, and then everyone shall do one thing, and that's where I think it gets unbalanced and stops making sense, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think we have to close the session because we are trying to be on time so everyone can join until the end. I want to thank you so much for joining and for the fruitful discussion. You will receive a questionnaire. It's very short. It takes only 3 minutes to be done. Please collaborate with us so we can make sure to have all your opinions. Maybe some of you didn't have the chance to express themselves during the conversation. Well, now you have time to do it. So please, it would be nice to have you to our new webinar next week. We will send you information via email. Thank you so much. Thanks to Pedro for the nice presentation, and thanks to everyone that joined the conversation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a nice
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you next week.
Thank you for the interesting discussion. We will meet soon again on May 19 for the coming episode of our webinars. It will be about catalyst development, the role of high throughput research. We will have a few scientists to join our conversation. And if you want to register to the coming webinar, you can find the link below. And you can visit our website, materialspioneer.com. It was very interesting to meet you, and I will see you soon.